Welcome to the Academic Writing Amplified podcast. On this podcast, we believe that the culture of academia needs to change radically. Women and non-binary people are revolutionizing academia within institutions that were not built for us. If you're ready to reject the culture of overwork, kick guilt and overwhelm to the curb, and amplify your voice to make a real impact on your field without breaking down or burning out, you're in the right place. With our team of experienced writing coaches as co-hosts, we'll share insights and talk to inspiring guests to bring you the practical strategies, systems, and mindset shifts you need to find time to write, publish work you love, and design your career on your terms. And it all starts with writing. Let's go.
All right. Hello. So today I am here with Coach Gina Robinson, and we are talking about coaching at different career stages. What is a good career stage to use coaching or to engage in coaching? So Gina, just to start out, I wanted to ask you to talk about what is coaching? Like, what's the difference between coaching and just training or teaching?
That's a great question, especially because coaching is kind of a new concept to a lot of people. And so one of the big differences between coaching and training or teaching or anything is that coaching is a relationship that you're developing. So it is two people, or if you're in a group, it's a group of people, but you are as much a part of that relationship as the coach. And so you're not just like soaking in information. There may be some of that, right? And you can do that in all kinds of other ways. You can watch videos on YouTube. You can, go watch the 100 best TED Talks or whatever. But this is much more about connecting new information to your life and finding ways to take your ideas and the things you want to do and actually make them happen. And so it is definitely not for people who just want information, right? Who just want to learn all the things. It's much more about taking what you have and actually figuring out how to use it.
I love that. We're so trained as academics, right? To take in, we take notes and we read things and we make the notes on the things. And yes, we process information and we have original ideas, but that kind of self-reflection and the calling on the inner voices and the inner, the self-trust part of coaching, I think is something that is a new way to experience professional development for many academics. Like if you've never been coached before, if you don't know what coaching is, then it might feel strange to you, but it is definitely, I think, so transformative. So let's dig into the topic of the day, which is, at what stage do you think career coaching or any kind of coaching, what stage of the career is a good stage to start getting coaching? So do you have just an answer to that question first?
Well, actually, my first answer is that I often in programs, like when we're doing our Navigate program, I'll have people who are, maybe a few years into their career, and they'll say, I wish I had learned this sooner. And I can't tell you how many times people say that. So sometimes when people are thinking about doing coaching, I'm like, now is the time. Wherever you are, now is the time, because later on, you're going to say, I wish I'd known that sooner. And so if anybody's thinking about waiting or oh gosh, there'll come a time, you probably need it now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone is always kind of saying, okay, I wish I'd known that earlier, but this is a really good time to learn it.
Yeah. I love that. The answer is now. If you're thinking about doing it,
Yes.
The time is now. And that's the other thing I wanted to say, because I think sometimes, and I know that literally I have been guilty of this myself. I'm no, it's not that bad. I'm okay. I can figure it out myself a little while longer. So how do you coach people when they're having kind of those thoughts? Or what would you just say to someone who's considering coaching and then they're well, but actually I can just hang on a little longer?
Oh my gosh. I have had that experience so many times in my life. And so part of it is a really personal feeling that when you say, I can hold on a little bit longer, it's already way too late. You
Yes.
need someone when you start saying, I can hang on a little bit longer. Because if you think about it, ideally, you don't want to be hanging on at any point. As soon as
Yes.
something feels wrong, you really want to be able to deal with it. And yeah, I've had a lot of situations where I felt like, oh, there's all this pressure mounting and I don't know what to do, but I'm fine. And the thing is, if you wait until you're not fine, that's real trouble. And that's a
Yeah.
lot that you have to clean up. So if you're even thinking, I can hang on a little bit, remind yourself that you shouldn't even be in a point where you're hanging on.
Yes. I mean, I literally have recently had this experience where I was talking to my coach. So I have like a life coach. I have a business coach I work with, and I have a life coach I work with. And I was talking to my life coach, and, we were talking about burnout. And that's something, right, that we talk about a lot. And I was like, no, but I've literally said this, Gina. I was like, no, but I've been worse, because this one time I was ready to like check myself into some like the hospital. I was like, I need so much rest. The only way I can think about getting it is to like turn myself in,
Mhm.
And she's like, that's a little bit past burnout.
Yeah.
She's like, that's like another level. And I was like, oh, so yeah, your desire to change things in your career or in your life doesn't have to get to the point where you like are ready to check yourself into an institution in order to make those changes. It doesn't have to get that far. And we do have some clients like this as well. We have people who are like, yeah, things are going good. Want to tune up. Like, I just want to like make it even a little bit better. And I love that, because it's kind of saying like, just okay isn't good enough for me. I really want to live my best life and live my best career. So I think that's like something to think about. If you're like, oh, I can just hang on. Yeah, you're probably already past the point where you need some help. And that I've been there before. So like, I know that feeling.
And in that moment, like you can definitely stop. You can just take that pause and say, what do I need? And honestly, like at that point with burnout, it might not be coaching yet. You might need a month of rest and then coaching, and that's probably what a good coach would say, is just take some rest. But yeah, so waiting, it's almost like drinking water. I've always heard this about drinking water. When you're thirsty, it's too late. You should drink water beforehand. So drinking water and coaching, they go together.
They go together. It's the same. Yes. Okay. So let's dig into some career stages. I thought what we could do is kind of talk about, since you and I have coached so many academics at different career stages, what are like maybe some common themes around different career stages? So let's just start with our early career folks. I mean, I like to talk about people who are in professorships. So let's start with like, you just got your tenure track job or equivalent, depending on where you are in the world. And you're in that first 1 to 5 years, on the job. What are some kind of typical themes that we are coaching people around in that stage?
Well, I think the first thing, the like most common thing, is sort of this onslaught of opportunities that show up as soon as you become a tenure track professor. And I've talked to people who, this summer before the semester starts, and they've already got a full inbox of, do you want to join this committee? Do you want to come and do this thing? Hey, there's this application for this thing. You don't even know about it, but here, just apply anyway. And I think that for that first year, it is about being able to breathe, being able to see what's going on. And then also, and this is like a big deal, this is like a set yourself up for a great career, developing like discernment, that ability to know. And of course, in our programs, one of the first things we do is we start with your mission statement, and, you want to know where you're moving towards and what, like, be able to set your compass. And so that can be really nice. I really enjoy that experience of coaching people through that first year, because it's almost traumatic, how much stuff kind of comes at you. And to have someone there, I kind of think of it as like have someone there holding your hand, like, you have everything that you need. You just need somebody behind you going, yes, you can do it.
Yes, absolutely. And I think too, another part of that transition onto the tenure track or the full-time job is also about coming out from under the wing of your advisor, right? Like, so there's that discernment about what you want to do, and also making yourself, like, whether you had a great advisor, and so you kind of have a happy feelings when you think about your advisor and great collaborations, or whether you have mediocre relationship with the advisor or you have a bad relationship with the advisor, it doesn't matter in a sense. The work of those first few years is zoning in on what you want to do that's different from your advisor and how you're going to become your own academic out from under the wing, whether it was like a very nurturing wing or whether it was figuring out who you are, establishing your scholarly identity is like such a big part of that discernment process. And I think like, yeah, the mission statement's really important there. I don't know. I think like a lot of times, especially when you've like just been on the market, and so you're like trying to attract opportunity to you, I think it kind of overflows into that first year. Like there's so many opportunities and like, yes, it's great. Like opportunities are wonderful, right? Mm-hmm. And at the same time, if we say yes to all of them without discernment, then we are setting ourselves up for like a diluted scholarly identity and a lot of stress because you are like not controlling your calendar the way that you really need to get your work done.
Yeah. And so if you can plan it before things get out of control, that's amazing, right? But then, of course, and I think I'm skipping ahead now to
go ahead.
That point where, because I'm sure that there are people now listening thinking like, oh God, that would have been great. But now I've got all of these problems that I've got to resolve, right?
Yeah.
And maybe you're 2 years in, you're 3 years in, you're starting to really think about tenure. And that's also a really great time. That's actually when I feel like we really catch people, you know, because that's when people start realizing like how hard it is to keep doing this and how unsustainable it might be. And so that's the moment when those people who said, I'm going to hit the ground running as soon as I get my first tenure track job, which is, there's nothing wrong with that, but that does then end up a couple of years later being a little bit overwhelming.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think at that moment is where coaching around boundaries is really important, coaching around how you prioritize things and that you have the agency to prioritize things for yourself. And that if you don't take that agency, if you don't step into that powerful place that you can exist in your career, if you don't do that, like you're going to continue to get like bowled over by other people and pulled around by what other people want you to do because nobody is protecting your time except you. Like nobody is out there fighting for your time. You have to do it. So I think that, once you're like looking, you're like, oh, I'm going to have to put up my tenure packet in 2 years or in a year or even in 3 years. And people start to panic, right? Because the timeline on academic publishing is so long. And maybe they're looking around at their current situation going like, wait a minute, how am I going to do this for 3 more years and get the publications out that I need to get and go up and have a cohesive packet and all of that stuff. And I think it's like, I don't want anybody to panic and then go to coaching, but we do find people that way. Like people are like Googling at that point, like, how do I get some help here? So I think that's a really important kind of moment that coaching can really help because it reminds you of your agency, right? And of your ability to really control what's happening. I mean, to the extent that you can, like more control than you have right now.
Definitely. And then of course, now I'm like just going off and so excited.
Yeah, do it.
The other, group of people we get, and this is outside of where they are in their career, are people who really kind of want to either start a family, maybe they have a family and now they're getting into academia, or they want to be able to balance the home life and maybe not having that second shift that we always talk about, and how to actually make the work and the life separate things. No matter what stage in your career you're at, that's something that you sort of constantly have to be working at. You have to sort of rebuild all of your infrastructure over and over again. And that's really, really helpful with a coach because, again, you're holding someone's hand and you're going through it and someone is telling you that it's okay. Because this is the other, I feel like there are lots of people who show up and they're like, well, my way of doing things isn't right. They've been told that there's only one way to do things. And so acknowledging that your way of doing things or the path that you took is acceptable, that's again another really big part of it. And it is something that coaches can really help with.
And really, like, kind of going back to the mission of Scholar's Voice, right? The only way that academia is going to change is if people do things differently. So if you're trying to do your career the way you saw your advisor do it, or the way you imagine that other people have done it, then there's a certain amount of replication of the culture of academia that values overwork, that glorifies busy, and all of that stuff. You're going to replicate that, of course, like, because that's the model that you have. So a coach helping you to see that you doing it your way, like there isn't actually a quote unquote right way. And let's be real, like the right way that a lot of people are trying to replicate is like a very white privilege, like a very kind of certain way. You have to have a certain body and a certain identity to have that way work for you. So anyway, we should do it differently. So, and having a coach help you through that is important.
Yeah, because I remember hearing in a group, someone was saying, well, that's just always how they've done it. And it was great to sort of recognize that, no, but you are the future leaders here. And so it doesn't have to be that way in the future. But the very first thing that we have to do is recognize that there is more than one way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So let's move on to that. I just got tenure moment, little bit like right after. It might be my favorite moment to coach, right? Like that. I did it. I got it. Oh, crap. Now what am I going to do? So what kind of things come up when we coach mid-career folks?
Well, I think that's actually a really big part of it is that feeling of arriving somewhere.
Yeah.
We're not really used to it, first of all. I mean, even like you get your PhD and you have to go right into your tenure-track position. And every milestone comes with another set of instructions. But this one comes with very little, a nice phone call and then go off and do whatever it is that you do. And I think that's a point when people really start to look around and say, I've never really been in control of my career, so I don't even know what to do. I'm in the driver's seat, but I don't know how to drive yet.
Yeah. And I think too, like the snowball of your career, like that snowball metaphor where it's like a big snowball rolling down a hill and you're picking up twigs and rocks and stuff. And it just gets bigger and bigger and you don't kind of realize it. And then until you're like, here I am, I have tenure. Now I'm supposed to be able to do whatever I want, but I have all these things. Like I'm still dragging all these things with me that I don't really want. And also, like most people who are mid-tenure, I mean, because it takes a while to get there, right? Like you're older and you're more mature. And there's also like a little bit of that, I'm 40 and I'm not going to take anybody's BS anymore, kind of part of it too, possibly. And it's a real moment where I don't know, I see a lot of our clients like really step into what they actually want to do and the career they actually want to have. Because there's no playbook after tenure. There might be some rumors. There might be like, oh, if you're in a book field, you really have to have 2 books, or if you're this, But even though there's not hard and fast rules for tenure in most places, there's really not hard and fast rules for full. And even like in terms of timeline, because at least for tenure, there's usually a timeline, but for full, there's no timeline.
They just, it's okay when you're ready, but you'll know when you're ready. And I think the other thing that happens or can happen is sort of this sense of disillusionment because we expect tenure to be like a fresh start or a big shift or change. And when we realize the next day you wake up and you go to work and everything is the same, there is a real sense of disillusionment. Like, well, what else is there? And again, it is with coaching, just through talking it out with another person that you can turn that disillusionment into something else, whether that's, a different ambition or some kind of like empowerment that is going to help you make some changes rather than that disillusionment, then mixing with your burnout to make you never want to go to the office again.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think we get quite a few people at that stage who are like, I'm doing your program And in the back of my head, one of the reasons I'm doing it is because I might actually want to exit academia and I want to see if I can make it work for me before I take that drastic step. And we don't usually coach people out of academia. Like that's not what we usually do. And so I think it's really exciting to be a coach of someone who is like, I have to make this work for me. And so I'm all in. I actually really love working with people mid-career for that reason.
Yeah. And people who are really thinking about leaving academia. So I've worked with people who maybe get to their third year review and they're not getting the kind of feedback that they want. And they're thinking, maybe I should just leave.
Yeah.
And that is a great time. And you know my background. I jumped ship many, many years ago. But I don't actually end up coaching a lot of people to leave.
Me neither.
I can remember a couple of situations where really just acknowledging that, like, maybe I could leave. And if I did, it would be fine. Sometimes that sort of talks people back from the edge, right? From knowing that they have other options and feeling a little bit less like hemmed in. That can just open up a lot of like joy in people's careers that they just did not expect.
Yeah, they kind of stop being so married to the outcome and they're just like, oh, because I could do it or not. And it's actually a very freeing place to be, like totally, and really fun. So in our Elevate program, we've ended up working with quite a few people who are doing things inside of academia, like creating a research center, running an institute, that kind of career move. And I've been having a really fun time actually coaching some one-on-one clients about that, because it's like I get to bring my business and like organization building brain with my academic brain. And like, how do you build this organization like inside of your institution? And that's been really fun. And so I would love to see more people, like come on over and get coached around when they're trying to build something. And I guess like actually building a lab, like in Elevate too, we get a lot of people who are like building labs and that kind of thing. And I think one of the things that kind of group of people struggle with the most is letting go of things, right? Like outsourcing, delegating, and all of that stuff. That's something that I think is much more common post-tenure, but actually people who run labs and are in institutes pre-tenure, which there are plenty of them, are also like having to deal with that. Like, how do I not do everything myself? And so much fear around letting go of tasks and outsourcing them to other people.
Yeah, the delegating is really tough, especially for our clients. I think this idea that they're going to increase somebody else's workload and make someone else unhappy is the main reason why people don't delegate when they can. And it's the same thing with asking for help, right? I'm overwhelmed and I need a colleague to take over something. And we don't want to do it because we don't want to burden other people. Yeah. But the thing is, we still have to take care of ourselves. And that is really hard at just about any phase. But I've definitely noticed when people are in those leadership positions where they've got people underneath them, there's a lot of energy that they spend trying to take care of other people. And so again, a coach is going to remind you to start taking care of yourself.
Yeah. And one of the things too that a coach can help you do, and it's amazing how difficult this is figuring out what you actually want to do. Like what you like to do and what you want to do and what you're uniquely good at. It's amazing how many clients don't really know. Like they've never been asked, like you've just always had to do everything and you do it. And for our clients, at least, you do it with excellence. Like everything you do with excellence. Of course you do. And so discerning again, right? Like discerning, like what is the thing that I'm uniquely good at? So I should stick with that rather than be worried about like, I don't like this thing. And so I don't want to give it to somebody else, but actually understanding what you're good at and where you really need to invest your limited time and energy versus other things that other people could be doing. Like figuring that out I think is really, really important and helpful when you have a coach, definitely.
Yeah. especially because as you rise through your career, I'm going to think of it as sort of like an escalator, you're getting more and more responsibility, and your understanding of who you are doesn't necessarily move at the same rate. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And actually, I think it might have been a coach that you really love, Natalie Miller. She mentioned in one of her podcasts, if you're thinking like, I'm almost there, I'm almost to that next level, you might actually be there. And that's just sort of your mindset lagging a little bit.
Yes.
And so when people take on new leadership positions or try to build something new, they don't often have someone there sort of helping them with that mindset. And that's honestly like sometimes the hardest part, because we know how to do all the rest of it, right? And that's part of why we don't want to give anything up or delegate, because we are good at all of those things. We're good at the very highest level things, but we're also very good at typing. So we want to make sure we type everything.
Yeah.
We're very good at proofreading. I should not be proofreading because there are other people who are good at that. And like you said, we're used to being good at everything. One of my favorite things to ask people is sort of to choose something that they can be bad at, that they're just okay with being bad at.
Yes.
Like I am terrible at, taking out the trash. There are things that, if you're bad at it, I don't think anybody's ever really going to be unhappy with that. And it's hard for a lot of people to sort of to really internalize that, because we've grown up learning to be good at everything.
No, and that if you're bad at something, school teaches you that you should try to get better at it. And I think it's related to that lagging mindset or that lagging understanding of like who you actually are and what you've actually accomplished. It's like actually at your level as a professor, you should stop trying to get good at things you're bad at and figure out how you're going to delegate things that you're bad at, or even that you're mediocre at, or even that you're excellent at, so that you can really work in your genius areas and you can really like do the things that are uniquely suited to you. And stop, like we hear that so much, like I need to get better at this, or I need to, it's like, actually, no, you need to be you. So how can you be more you and solve your problems by being more you, rather than by saying like, I'm lacking this, and so I need to get better at it. Like, no, you're beyond that. You have a level of expertise that needs to be like really, like nurtured and cared for. And so you don't need to be wasting your time like getting good at things that you're not good at.
Yeah, I really like that. And it takes off so much pressure, right?
Yeah.
Because again, just about any stage, you're not only dealing with whatever expectations are coming externally, but also your own internal expectations.
Yeah.
And this is also something that I've realized working with so many people, is that we hold ourselves to such high standards that it doesn't matter what I have to do for tenure. I have these standards. And of course, that's amazing, because that's gotten most of us to where we are. But again, it's one of those things that now you can kind of start to let go of, just like worrying about what you're not good at.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's probably a good place to wrap up today. We covered so much. This was really a great conversation. Thank you, Gina.
Yeah, it was. I love talking about coaching. So
I know I do
to talk about coaching anytime.
Yay! So before we leave, I'll just say that if you're interested in our Navigate program, which now includes coaching, like that's something that we decided to pull into our signature program. I was like, why didn't we do this before? But you can always go to scholarsvoice.org/navigate, find the pink button and either sign up for the wait list, or if we're enrolling, that pink button will say apply now. And you can get coached with us, which is so much fun.
Thank you so much for spending your valuable time supporting yourself and your writing by listening to this episode. If you like what you heard today, the best way to say thank you is to hop on over to Apple iTunes and write an honest review. The more reviews, the more amazing academic women and non-binary people will find this podcast. So go write one now.